Xiomy here. So today I'm going to do my first ever January wrap up, and I'm so content with that myself because I got to read a little bit more than I really hoped for. There is something that you're never going to see in my channel, and that's TBRs, just because I honestly am very nitpicky, and sometimes I don't want to read the second installment of the book, but I want to read something else. So that's something that you're never going to see, probably maybe in June and July, because, you know, summertime, because that's the time that I have most to myself. I also have a full-time and a part-time job currently, so, and I'm very active in my community, so filming is a little bit difficult for me every now and then. And I did set a goal for myself, especially in each month and in 2016. I want to read from 5 different genres, or 5 different categories, as I would say. I do want to read a new book, and to me obviously a new book is something that I've never read before, so it could be a book from 2014 and whatnot. I do want to reread a book just because I've noticed that books that I love, I haven't reread that often, and maybe I've read once or twice the books that I love, but I do want to, you know, read them a little bit more. I also want to get into classics just because I've noticed that that genre is one that I really do deviate from, and I want to read a little bit more about that. Also, I want to get into adult fiction, well, not adult, yeah, adult fiction, let's say adult fantasy, and historical fiction, just because I haven't gotten into those genres. But I don't mean adult fantasy where they're bumping and grinding every 2 minutes or every 2 pages, you know. I want it to be, you know, a little bit more in depth than that, you know. Every now and then it's okay, but, you know, not all the time. And historical fiction is something that I really want to get into. So those are the 2 kind of genres that I do want to get into, just because I've never read anything about them. And obviously comics. I can't not read about comics just because I'm such a geek on comics, so, you know, that's something I can't deviate from. But the books that I read in January, okay, the first one that I'm going to mention, I probably am going to say that I lied a little bit, because I started in December, but I ended up in January, so it's going to count as January, you know. And that is The Heart of Betrayal by Marie E. Pearson. This is the 2nd book in the Remnant Chronicles. I love this book. I gave a 4.8 in Goodreads, but I love this book. It's amazing. Characters to me grew in this book so much, and there were plots and twists that I really wasn't expecting. And I love the assassin in this book. I think that's wrong to love the assassin, but I loved him. I'm Team Cadden. I'm just sorry about that. But I do love that you got to know more about the character, and especially the backstory of Cadden, and something that really touched my heart. And Leah, this woman is freaking amazing. I love her as a princess, and the fact that she stands up for those who she believes in, and even though that she knows she's going to get punished for it, she still does it. And it's something that I really do love about it. And the prince, he was, you know, he was amazing. He had his moments where I was like, I'm gonna smack you. But I really did love this book, and I enjoyed it. Now, the 2nd book that I'm going to talk about, I'm all for retelling, but in this book, I don't know, I'm talking about Cinder by Marissa Mayer. I do love retellings, but I mean, this book is good to read, don't get me wrong, but it isn't my favorite book. You know, it's not like I'm going to be like, oh my god, this book was so amazing, I love this so much, because it's not. You know, it was a good reading, but it wasn't appealing to me. I mean, the first 3 chapters I was so bored, and honestly I was so bored by it, and it's like I couldn't connect with the characters. And even though they were explaining things that makes you want to connect with the characters, I really wasn't feeling that vibe. It wasn't drawing my attention. And then in chapter 4, when they started mentioning the lunars, this is when, you know, my curiosity just sparked, and it just opened, and my mind was like, wait, I want to know more, I want to read more, let's see what's happening. So basically when they introduced the lunars is when I actually excuse me, when I actually became more interested in the book, just because of Queen Lavanna. I have so many horrible, nasty, mean things to say about Queen Lavanna and Adri and Pearl, that if I start mentioning them, I'm going to dampen the mood of this book. Well, this video entirely. So you know what, I'm just not gonna mention anything. And like, not even halfway through it, you already know what's gonna happen. But I was like, you know, in my mind telling myself, you know what, don't spoil it for yourself, just don't. And you do have those little parts where they're referring to the fairy tale, especially Cinder, you know, Cinderella, the car, which is orange, that Cinder finds, and she basically fixes, and it takes her to the ball. It's orange, so, you know, hinting the pumpkin that takes her to the ball. There's a part that I know I shouldn't laugh, but it was just I'm sorry, but it was just funny. And you know that when she's coming down the stairs, you know, her glass slip falls off her shoe, and in this case it was her entire foot, and I was, oh my god, I was laughing. I know it's wrong in so many ways for me to laugh on that, but I did love Prince Kai. I mean, his selflessness was so beautiful, and the fact that, you know, he was willing to risk his own happiness just to protect his people. I mean, even he knew that he wasn't ready to be an emperor, and that burden that he had inside of him was just amazing to read about. I didn't think he was selfish in one bit. He was, to me, what a true prince, and in this case an emperor, should be. And I really did love his character, and it wasn't boring. I really did enjoy reading it after they mentioned the lunars, because like I said, the first 3 chapters I really wasn't into them, and when they started mentioning the lunars, this is when my curiosity just sparked, and I wanted to know more about it. And I wanted to know, okay, how do they get into the moon? Do they have special gills or some kind of form or apparatus that makes them breathe in the moon? How do they get there? Do they have a special dome that protects them from everything else? Like, how did they get to the moon is what I want to know. And I hope, you know, obviously these things are going to be, you know, spoke about more in depth in the other. I think that, you know, Aiko, she could have been expanded a little bit more, because she was so funny, and it really did hurt me when, you know, what happened to her happened. And also Peony, you're in my heart, woman. You have my heart, child, honestly. But you know, I gave this 3 stars in Goodreads. Okay, now the next book that I'm gonna talk about is The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey. Now, to me, this is a really good writing, and it's amazing reading. I enjoyed the writing very much, but to me this book had no originality to it. To me, what sets it apart from every other dystopian or post-apocalyptic writings that there is what you bring to the table, and how different and how creative you make it, so you know you can draw your readers in. And to me, this had no originality to it. To me, it's like he created this bubble, and in that bubble he threw in a lot of post-apocalyptic TV shows, movies, readings. He threw in dystopian eras and, you know, short stories, and he just created his own writing, but with everything that was already pre-done. I mean, I did like the hints. I mean, there were a couple of original aspects to it. The fact that there are 5 ways to annihilate, you know, the planet is something that was very original. But the fact that, you know, it's like we never fought for our world. We just let them take over it, and you know, these waves just kept on hitting us and hitting us and hitting us, and we really don't see where, you know, people actually stand up. Because I mean, even in The Walking Dead, even in Falling Skies, when the aliens come and attack, basically, even though we might have problems in the beginning and whatnot, but we group together and we fight for what we believe in. And you know, even in The Walking Dead, you know, people do eventually group up together, and they will try and stop whatever imminent threat is going to attack us. And to me, I didn't feel that in these books. So I honestly didn't think there was a lot of creativity to it. I did like the flashbacks that you do get from Cassie every now and then, and characters that I really did enjoy. So I really, you know, it isn't my favorite book, but I enjoyed reading it. In the comic book genre that I read, my goodness, I read Injustice, Gods Among Us. I have to say that this is one of the, I mean, the writing was amazing, the graphics were beautiful and spectacular, but I have to say that this is, and I read only year 1, but I have to say that this is one of the biggest temper tantrums, self-driven pride, ego-boosting vendettas that I've seen in my life, honestly. And it's like they want to create a ceasefire after what Superman does, because, you know, he couldn't protect the love of his life and his unborn child, so he wants to protect everyone in the entire world. I mean, Superman, grieve, man, grieve. I mean, and this is basically happens because, you know, our little lunatic, crazy, demented villain who cuts off his own face and then staples it back on decides to come to Metropolis and wreak havoc on the Kent family. I think he got tired of wreaking havoc on the Bat family. I'm not gonna give too much away, so you know, you can read it, because it's really good. I mean, there are a lot of characters that did let me down, and some scenarios or circumstances that, you know, just made my jaw just completely drop. The next comic book that I read is the final one that I'm going to mention, and that's Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. I had a lot of problems with these comics, but I love the way that they ended. They ended the way it had to end, honestly. In my eyes,